You know what I want to do?
Yeah.
What do I want to do?
Kids is an incredibly unique film. The film touches on adolescence, but in pretty much the darkest way I have ever seen, and it remains one of the most controversial films ever made. Released in 1995, it takes place over the course of a single day and follows a group of pretty much random kids in urban New York City. The film follows the teenagers as they steal, get have sex, and unknowingly participate in the of the early 90s in America. If you've seen it, then you'll know that it can be incredibly difficult to watch, but in its own way, it is a very beautiful but very raw film. The idea for this video started when I watched a documentary that was made on this movie. It is called We Once Were Kids. It was released in 2022, and it tells a really interesting behind-the-scenes story of how the movie was made, and also the aftermath of what happened since the movie was released. What I didn't know was that the movie Kids is built on a really strong bedrock of exploitation. The film's director, a guy called Larry Clark, was in his mid-50s when he started hanging out with teenagers in various spots in New York. He was a photographer and became absolutely obsessed with the subculture of skateboarding and could not believe the gritty way that these kids were living their lives. These kids had no supervision, no respect for authority, and they were pretty much living each day like it was their last. Larry obviously saw that this had the potential to be a fantastic low-budget indie movie. And I'm not gonna lie, it is an incredible thing to watch. It's a look into the subculture of reckless freedom that you just cannot take your eyes off of. Larry made the decision to cast real kids. These were not actors by any means. Leo Fitzpatrick, Chloe Sevigny, Justin Pierce, Rosario Dawson, these were just kids who were living in New York City when Larry Clark approached them with the concept of the film and offered them $1,000 to be a part of his production. And the decision to use real kids obviously added to the emotional vulnerability of the film, because the way that some of the kids were on screen was exactly the way that some of them were off screen, like Justin Pierce, who plays Casper in the film. He was just as charismatic and reckless as the character that he portrayed. During filming, he got arrested after a fight with police. He broke his wrist and was forced to finish half of the movie with a broken wrist but no cast on. Larry made him remove it during takes. Justin Pierce was only 17 when he was cast in the role, and the movie made him famous, but this proved fatal because Justin struggled terribly with his mental health and eventually died via in Los Angeles at the age of 25. It's crazy now to watch the film with this in mind, because you realize that he was only 25 years old when he felt like this, and all of his behaviors on and off screen were symptoms of a much bigger issue. During filming, he drank so much and would frequently start fights with random co-stars for no reason. And then you've got Harold Hunter, who was a really good skater. He was central to a pretty intense scene in the film and became super famous for a few years after the movie came out. Unfortunately, the acting momentum didn't really stick, so he couldn't really get consistent work, and he died in his apartment at the age of 31 from a induced heart attack. Another factor that made the movie feel so real was because it was real. Those kids that you see on screen doing were really doing. This was an indie production. They didn't have the same amount of restrictions that a big budget production would have. The film had a very improvisational tone. The people you see on screen were nothing but street kids, given the chance to be in a movie. Look at this! These are like 13-year-olds! But as weird as this sounds, it worked. When the movie was released, to some, it was a piece of art. As a viewer, you felt like you were just watching human beings be human beings. The authenticity of the film was unmatched. Audiences thought that the film was a documentary, and it shocked viewers with how real it felt. News outlets felt that the movie was simply too much. The movie was shot on a $1.5 million budget and ended up grossing more than $20 million during its release. But a lot of the cast members started showing animosity towards Larry Clark, who, as I mentioned, paid each of the cast members $1,000 to be in his movie, and nothing more. Yes, Leo Fitzpatrick and Chloe Sevigny became famous, and they started getting consistent acting work. But the other 90% of kids featured in the movie were simply forgotten about, while a lucky few left the poor, impoverished lifestyle that they were born into. So I watched the movie by accident as a kid. I remember being 11 years old, going into a DVD rental store, seeing the cover, and I thought it was a kid's movie because it was called Kids. I remember renting that and the Bean movie and watching it by myself alone in my room.
Hello.
It was the most intense film I'd ever seen in my life, and it probably rewired my brain, but it was incredible. Some hated the movie, but I am one of those people that appreciates everything about the film. The tone, the acting, the authenticity. No other film has ever made me as uncomfortable as Kids. The film has become a cultural icon, and the documentary released in 2022, We Once Were Kids, was amazing. I thought that it was just going to be a boring, behind-the-scenes look at how the movie was made, but it isn't. It is incredible. It goes very deep into Justin Pierce's life, who his father is, and how it impacts his decision to do what he did. And it gives you an intimate, dark look at Harold Hunter, and by the end, you feel so bad for him.
It started out having a lot of documentary factors in it because I like hung out with skaters for about 3 years, and everything in the film had happened.
It's
I think Justin is so dynamic in it.
He's
he's
such a crush
real
on
and the
him.
most alive, I think, of all the
such a crush on him.
performances.
He was brilliant. He really, so does Harold. Like, they just really, I especially think about Harold a lot because I think he was so talented and so free and just such a remarkable being.
Please, if you get the opportunity, watch it. It changes your perspective and your view on kids completely.
I have no legs. I have no legs.
Have you seen it? What are your thoughts? Do you think that it genuinely is a piece of art, or is it just an over-the-top experiment that's filmed on the basis of shock value and nothing more? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.